storm brought dinner!
So get this, there are a number of seabirds that actually chase storms. Yeah, like the storm chasers. They seek the calmer eye of the storm, of course, but doing so keeps them safe, and the extra wind helps them fly with relative ease. I mean, some of these birds stay out in the ocean for months at a time, so anything they can do to help them conserve energy helps.
Even if there's a risk of zaps. But today's Pokemon doesn't have to worry about that!
Yes, we're talking about Wattrel and Kilowattrel, the newest regional bird Pokemon as of recording. And as their names suggest, they are a pair of electric flying types. A watt is a standard unit used to measure electricity, and thus a kilowatt is a measurement of electricity that is bigger, like a gram and a kilogram. I, for one, am a huge fan. So I, too, can help these seabirds stay aloft. But no, I'm a huge fan of this trend of giving early route Pokemon non-standard typings. Since Gen 1, we've always had the same boring, normal type Sentrits and bug, poison, Wurmples nearly every single time. But from Gen 6 onwards, the regional birds have all ditched the standard flying normal for more exotic typings. Boo! Except for that one. But 3 out of 4 is alright. But these two got their fire and steel typings for concrete reasons. Corviknight dons a full suit of armor inspired by medieval knights, and Talonflame, a flame-tipped arrow crossed with an Australian firehawk, a bird that literally wields fire while hunting. So now is the same true for the Wattrel line? Well, kinda. The connection here is more theoretical than concrete. It comes from the second part of their names, that trell. You see, Petrels are a type of seabird that you could find pretty much on any coast of the planet, though they spend significantly more time out at sea than on the shore, which is why you may have never heard of them before. They behave similarly to your typical seagull. They're just a lot tinier, and we're talking like sparrow sizes here. Little cuties. But the unique thing about these birds is, unlike gulls or boobies, petrels span across multiple families. They're all a part of the Procellariiformes order, so technically related, but in a second cousin you vaguely know but have never really interacted with sort of way. For example, diving petrels have short and stout bodies designed to hunt krill and other small crustaceans by diving and swimming through water. Now compare that to the typical petrel, who are more so designed to be all-arounders, eating just about anything they can get their wings on. When placed side by side, you can see how they sort of fit together, but it'd be much more appropriate to put this one with fulmars and skuas, and this one with auks, another seabird known for its plump body and scoopier bill. And speaking of diving petrels, their signature behavior inspires Wattrel's Scarlet Pokédex entry. This Pokémon dives into the ocean, catching prey by electrocuting them. That second bit definitely takes after electrofishing. It's an efficient fishing method used by governments and other environmental agencies where an electrical current pulses through a river. Any fish swimming through the pulse will be temporarily stunned and float to the surface. This is mainly used by scientists to survey fish populations, and as painful as it looks, it's one of the more humane fishing approaches under managed conditions, but this strategy can quickly become dangerous when used for unregulated purposes, so it's banned for recreational use in most of the US. And that means you're banned too, mister! Give me that taser! Oh, you are so grounded!
And now, let's talk about
the storm petrels. Appearance-wise, they're a lot closer to more regular petrels, but the main difference is that storm petrels are entirely pelagic birds, which means they spend their entire lives at sea, only shoring on rocky cliffs for their breeding season, since the eggs don't really float. Pokemon reflects this well. That's why you can only find them along the Paldean shores, especially in cliffy areas.
Oh man, sleeping on a cliffside sounds so dangerous and thus uncomfortable. The more uncomfortable you are, the more you toss and turn at night, and that's dangerous when one slip-up equals falling hundreds of feet off the side. Ah! So let's give these birds some Helix mattresses from today's sponsor, Helix Sleep. That should help them. Well, at least they're still under warranty.
Helix Sleep is having a big Memorial Day sale right now, so it's a great time to upgrade your mattress. I wish I could explain to these birds that I switched to a Helix mattress more than 5 years ago, and I have been loving it. My wife and I took their quick and easy online sleep quiz, which matched us to the perfect mattress for our sleeping styles. In our case, we got the Helix Midnight Lux, which spares me from the warming oceans below the cliff's edge with its cooling cover, making sure I'm comfortable in my own body.
heat. Did you know that birds are warm-blooded too? It's not just a mammal thing. Now you'd think that delivering a mattress would be a huge hassle, but here the setup and delivery was easy. Free shipping in the US, and it comes vacuum-packed in a box. One snip slide and look at it expand! And once set up, there is a 100-night sleep trial to test the mattress out and ensure that you love it. And on top of that, there is a 10-year warranty and flexible financing options. And honestly, investing in your sleep is an easy way to improve your overall quality of life. So is not living on a cliff. But since you're so inclined, I'll help out more by directing you to their big Memorial Day sale. The link is at the top of the description, helixsleep.com/Lockstin, where you can get 25% off of your purchase plus 2 free pillows for a limited time. Check out the site for more details. I love these pillows, and my cat Sasha loves chilling out and sleeping on the bed with us too. Or the box it came with. And she also scares these birds. Which, appearance-wise, it seems to mix elements from the fork-tailed storm petrel and the black storm petrel, made evident by the black body and forked tail. Most species of petrel have square tail feathers to help them stay airborne, but some sacrifice this to help them move more aerodynamically through the air. Plus, I mean, just look at it, the color scheme is nearly identical. They just darkened the browns and substituted the lighter accents for yellow to reflect the electric typing, the standard for electric-type Pokemon. Also, if you haven't picked up on it already, its electric typing is obviously a play on thunderstorms. It has storm in the name, just like the storm petrels. However, it's more than just a name. Honestly, I can't think of any other animal more deserving of this type, because the real bird is already quite associated with thunderstorms. I mean, why else would it be called the storm petrel? The mythology and legends surrounding these birds comes mostly from old sailor stories. Some say storm petrels are the lost souls of drowned sailors and pirate captains who mistreated their crews, doomed to explore the skies of the seas for eternity, but just out of reach of the waters they once called home. If the poor souls began encircling a ship, they were clearly summoning a terrible thunderstorm to spread their misfortune. Others saw them as a warning sign of inclement weather rather than a cause, though, similar to how Absol works with natural disasters. The nickname Mother Carries Chickens was given to them even, a name derived from Mater Sarah, or Dear Virgin Mother, Virgin Mary. The Petrels were seen as protectors, believed to have been sent by Mary herself to forewarn of the impending downpour of the storm. This gave crews time to batten down the hatches, draw the sails, and prepare themselves for what lay ahead. And for the most part, this is actually pretty accurate to reality. Most of the time, yes, whenever the Petrels show up, a storm will soon follow after. But it's not due to any mysticism or divine intervention or anything like that. In reality, these birds don't like to hang around people, so they actively try to avoid ships or any unknown foreign object. But being the smallest seabird and all, they don't really have much of a chance to escape a rapidly approaching storm when they're constantly being pushed around by the strong winds that come with it. So they seek shelter anywhere they can, and a sailor's ship works great. So they put their disdain for humanity aside for a moment to survive. Now I want to go back to its Violet Pokédex entry because there's some intriguing stuff in there. These Pokemon make their nests on coastal cliffs. The nests have a strange crackling texture, and they're a popular delicacy. So cliffs, yeah, let's start there. It's true that most petrels only build their nests on rocky cliffs and are only around during the mating season, and you can bet your delicious buns that the many high cliffs around the Iberian Peninsula, what Paldea is based on, is one of those popular petrel spots. Over a dozen species call both Spain and Portugal home. In fact, a small uninhabited island off the coast of Portugal is the only place on Earth the critically endangered Desertas petrel has an established nesting colony. But now, what about that other part of the next entry? Yeah, apparently the people of Paldea eat Wattrel nests. And yes, apparently people do that in real life too. But it's not petrel nests specifically. Instead, it's swiftlet nests. They are considered a delicacy in some Chinese cuisines. They even named one of the species edible nest swiftlet, just because we eat their nests so often. They're primarily consumed in China and other Southeast Asian countries, and are one of the world's most expensive edible animal products. A pound of these nests can go for $3,000, which is just insane. The nests are usually cooked into a soup or stew as they add a gelatinous consistency to the broth. Eating the soup is said to provide many health benefits to the consumer, with some doctors claiming they contain medicinal properties. So okay, what you're all asking now is, alright, what does it taste like?
Well, I obviously haven't had it, but most reports describe its taste as that of salty and fishy poultry, though the taste is subtle. Perhaps the crackling taste the Pokédex mentioned doesn't really apply here, so it's likely that's just a reference to some lingering static electricity within the electric type's nests. Now, you may be looking at these examples and thinking, oh gross, they're covered in bird poo, but no, thankfully no. And even if they were, it wouldn't be the only animal poop people eat. But yes, no, it's not poop. It's just spit. Like honey. It's still kinda gross, but not as bad as I thought at first. No bird poop-hop rocks here. When its wings catch the wind, the bones within produce electricity. They just needed to tie electric generation in there somehow. IRL birds are super poor conductors. I mean, have you ever seen them hang around power lines? It's no issue to them. And despite this video's silly intro, birds actually very rarely get zapped by lightning. You see, lightning is always looking to escape into the ground or even the ocean. And if it were to strike a bird in flight, it then has no viable path to reach the ground or the ocean. So while freak accidents happen, birds typically don't get so much as static shocks from being within lightning storms. But it is worth mentioning that blueprints and prototypes for bird flight generators exist, which would use the power generated from flapping wings to charge a battery. Think of it like super small and living windmills. It's the same concept. These designs have never really been used on a wide scale aside from just some small tests, but there have been worse ideas, like eating a nest. So while petrels and seabirds don't generate electricity this way, they do soar high above the seas, spending most of their lives with very few landing opportunities. So these birds either need to adapt hydrophobic feathers to let them land in the water, or feathers that more easily catch wind to conserve extra energy, letting the moving air naturally lift them up rather than them having to constantly flap. And storm petrels evolved to focus on the latter, though they do have an oil coating on their feathers to help repel water too, so getting wet isn't a game over. And good thing it's not, because that would make catching food really, really complicated, considering they eat fish and almost nothing but. But actually, storm petrels specifically don't hunt the way the Pokédex mentioned Wattrel hunting. Remember, that's a diving petrel thing. So instead, storm petrels coast right above the surface of the water, looking for any small fish and crustaceans. Then when it finds a target, it scoops it up with its scoopy-banoopy shaped bill, and it returns to the sky. Just typical seabird stuff. What's not so typical, though, is how it uses its feet. By kicking across the surface, it better positions itself for a clean grab. Most predators use stealth to ambush prey, but sometimes awkwardly walking on the water to brute force your way in works too. And this is actually where the name Petrel comes from, by the way. In the Bible, Jesus appeared before Peter while he was on a boat looking for Christ. And after Jesus confirms his identity, Peter leaves the boat and walks across the water's surface to meet him. Sailors then compared the behavior the birds displayed to the miracle of St. Peter and named them Petrels. Like, it's not an exact match, but you can see how translating it through so many different languages and centuries of history could decipher it back to Peter. Peter, Petrel, yeah.
Come to me, Bird Peter.
Oh, yes, Bird Jesus, I will.
Thank you, Bird Jesus.
Whoa! That is one cool bird. It's Kilowattrel, because it's a killer. It has black and yellow lightning bolts everywhere. It has a weird throat sack thingy. Kilowattrel is kinda weird. On paper, this should be the coolest regional bird yet. Scars over the eyes, the classic black and yellow color scheme everyone loves shiny Rayquaza for, the sleek and sharp design, everything looks good, and yet I feel only slight affection for it. It's within my top 400 favorite Pokemon for sure, so it's above average, but not noteworthy. Let me know in the comments how you feel about it. But regardless, the bird it's based on is quite remarkable. Something I should have mentioned about Wattrel is that its Pokédex classification is the Storm Petrel Pokemon. I'm never a huge fan of when they literally say something is the real-life counterpart that it obviously is already. Like, how do people in the Pokemon universe know what a Storm Petrel is? You know? But at least it makes my job easier. And Kilowattrel is
classified as the Frigate Bird Pokemon. Frigate Birds are a family of colossal seabirds comprising 5 species. And before you ask, yes, I see the throat thing too. It's a gular pouch. Most of the time, it just looks like a little bit of neck skin, similar to dewlaps on some other animals, but frigate birds can inflate these to create giant red balloons that look like airbags. And like some other sacs, only the males have them, as their sole purpose is to attract mates during the breeding season. There are some other types of birds that have these too, grouses and prairie chickens for instance, and pelicans have the most useful and most recognizable of them. And unlike the other birds, they use theirs as a big net. And this is similar to how Kilowattrel uses theirs. According to the Pokédex, Kilowattrel inflates its throat sac to amplify its electricity. It uses its throat sac to store electricity generated by its wings. So, there it is. Like a pelican storing fish, Kilowattrel stores electricity it generates there, which may act as a source of food or energy for the species. The yellow coloring could also reference the brownish yellow color seen on juvenile and female frigate birds, though it may just be as simple as electricity equals yellow. But while on the topic of dex entries, Scarlet states, by riding the wind, this Pokemon can fly over 430 miles daily, which is only a little under double what real frigate birds do, which is 250 miles a day. Still extremely impressive, but Pokemon math. What gets really impressive about frigate birds, though, is that they can stay aloft for several months, which is a long time to go without touching land or touching the water. They don't stay in one spot either. Some species, like the lesser frigate bird, will just cross the entire ocean on a whim, and when combining each species' known range, they can pretty much be found anywhere on Earth. Except Europe. We'll get to what it's doing in Paldea in a bit, but first let's talk about its connection to the storm petrel. Not much. For the longest time, frigate birds were grouped with the Solidias, a bird family that cormorants, gannets, and boobies are found in, but more recently, it was found that genetic differences separated them enough to be grouped into their own family. Frigatidae. I'll show you how to forget a day. Lots of piracy.
Where's the rum gone?
So gannets are still its closest relative, but less than initially thought. And the connection to petrels is even lesser, so it's not at all like the woodpecker to toucan thing we talked about a couple videos ago. So why pair the two? Well, maybe because of this bird, the Cape Verde shearwater. Shearwaters are another type of seabird you've never heard of. But don't worry, we're only going to go into a bit of detail with this one. Just see it as the missing link between Wattrel and Kilowattrel. After all, it does look a lot like a frigate bird, doesn't it? The dead giveaway is the hooked beak shape, and yes, they inhabit the seas of Portugal, so that's a check off the list. But wouldn't you know it, they're not even closely related to frigate birds either. No, they're in the Procellaridae, a massive family comprising diving petrels and many more, but it all comes together. So frigate birds to petrels are like that one uncle who married into the family that no one is quite sure who the spouse is, but they keep getting invited to the Christmas party anyways. You know? Now, do you want to know the coolest thing about Kilowattrel? It's technically a pirate. Yep, kilo doesn't just mean kilowatt, it really did mean killer. Sorry to throw a red heron at you. I hope being tricked wasn't too much of a burden. Even if it was, I have no regrets. But yes, Kilowattrel takes design elements from pirates in various ways. Its throat pouch resembles the big beards of famous pirates throughout history. Its wings also look like the torn edges of a fierce pirate flag, drifting in the wind. As Kilowattrel rides the winds across the seven seas, any who dare cross paths with ye mighty bird shall see ye yives flash before your eyes, as ye witness thy fully extended wings. And before ye can escape, you'll be dragged to Davy Jones' locker by none other than Kilowattrel, the lightning pirate. It actually gets these pirate motifs from frigate birds themselves. They earned themselves the nickname Pirate Bird for 3 reasons mainly. I already touched on the first, their exploration tendencies. Frigate birds will travel basically wherever the wind takes them, and I do mean anywhere. Take the magnificent frigate bird. Usually they'll hang out around the Bahamas in South America, but in 2021, bird watchers sighted one of them on Lake Michigan's shores. This means it had to fly across the entirety of the continental US to even reach here, and it's not like this is a one-time occurrence either. This was Michigan's 7th sighting on record. Plus, every year, 1 or 2 frigate birds end up in extreme northern states, and even Canada occasionally, places they have no business being in whatsoever. And the same is true for Europe. Every so often, one will show up hundreds of miles away from home. And the same is true for Kilowattrel. Just because it's home isn't Paldea. Neither is Kanto, Kalos, or any other region for that matter. When you're a true pirate, nowhere is your home. And everywhere is your home at the same time. Well, except for the water. Despite how cool frigate birds are, they are the only seabird on the planet that cannot swim. They have no oily protection on their feathers, so getting wet means they can't fly until they dry out. And in the middle of the ocean, that's a really tough pickle to get out of. So, just like how the sea is a watery grave for a pirate, so too is it for a frigate bird. It's like eating a gum-gum fruit and getting the worst power ever, like, ooh, a superpower, what do I get? A balloon. It's my new superpower. Oh boy, a balloon. And lightheadedness. What am I supposed to do with this? But this extreme weakness to water that frigate birds have is also reflected in Kilowattrel's Pokedex entry. There's hardly any oil in its feathers, so it's a poor swimmer. But wait, if they can't go in the water, and they're almost always out at sea, I can understand them hovering and sitting in the air with the updrafts to sleep, but how do they eat? Since they can't hunt fish on their own, well, they take pretty extreme measures by preying on other birds, continuing the common regional bird evolution trend of small passerine bird evolving into a predator. It's existed since Gen 1, still around in Gen 9. However, it's not as simple as you think. Their hunts are much more unique than just eating birds as prey. In the most piratey fashion possible, they actually ambush smaller birds and steal their food from them by continuously diving and pecking at their target, all while airborne. The poor little bird is eventually forced to regurgitate their last meal to stop the onslaught. The frigate bird will then swoop in and capture the surrendered treasure, filling its belly with a stolen meal. They do this in groups too, playing dirty to gang up on one target. It's a very backhanded strategy. Only the most rotten of crews and pirates would dare do such a thing. It truly is deserving of the nickname, the Pirate Bird. This is another unexpected connector to the Paldean region. Spanish sailors were the first to witness this behavior of the frigate bird, and thus were the ones who gave it the Pirate Bird nickname. And I just love that about this bird. It took such a simple concept like a pirate bird, and they branched a whole tree connecting all these dots between Wattrel, Kilowattrel, and the Paldean region, and the real birds they're pulling from, all joining together. It's so cool. And the reason Wattrel evolves into Kilowattrel and is the regional bird of Paldea is because they all relate to an overarching theme: exploration. Portugal and Spain have always been exploration powerhouses. From Christopher Columbus setting off for America from Palos de la Frontera, Spain, to Portugal, mapping out African coasts for the first time. Travel and expedition is baked into the blood of the Iberian Peninsula. And the same is true for petrels and frigate birds. The seas are seen as the final frontier of earthly exploration. Yet, these birds have adventured them their entire lives. Frigate birds are even named directly after frigate ships, massive warships designed for speed and maneuverability that are used explicitly for Navy scouting and spying. Again, this connects back to Portugal, as they have the longest-serving navy in the world that still stands today, encompassing 5 active frigates. Wattrel doesn't sit the exploration vehicle influence out either. Remember that funny landing it does? Well, that's incredibly similar to how seaplanes land. Seaplane travel is one of the only reasonable ways to reach some of the most secluded areas of Earth. such as tiny islands or the whole of Antarctica. Wattrel's feathers on its head even resembles a little aviator cap with goggles so it doesn't get wind in its eyes. It's so cute! So really, when you look at them from the lens of what they represent versus what they are, you really start to see how they fit into the region perfectly. And that's, for lack of a better word, really cool. Just like you. And just not like Talonflame. Or Halucha. What are they doing in they're not French at all! Or so you'd think. Check out their videos next. Links here. Toodles.